Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing really well today. So I am in a little bit of a different setup today because I just took some photos of one of the projects for this video in this little setup here. But today I am going over a few different cozy sewing projects. So these are all kind of self-care themed type of sewing projects that I had been wanting to work on over the past couple of months, and I'm really happy with how they all turned out. So I hope you guys find one that you're interested in making. There will be 4 little mini tutorials in this video, so I hope you guys enjoy, and I'm going to go ahead and jump into the first project. So the first project I'll be making today is this velvet floor cushion, and I saw some like this on the Urban Outfitters website and thought it seemed like a pretty easy DIY, and then I realized I had this purple velvet lying around, so I thought it was kind of perfect. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut out a square out of the velvet. Mine is going to be 24 inches by 24 inches, and I'm marking that on the wrong side of the velvet just because it's a lot easier to draw on. So I'll just cut that out, and do be aware if you're cutting out velvet, you will make a little bit of a mess, but it's totally fine. You can brush it all away after you're done. So next I'm cutting out the side pieces, and I'll cut out 4 of these. They are 25 inches by 7 inches. I'm just adding 1 inch into the original length of the square pieces for a seam allowance. So I'll cut out 4 of those, and then my cushion is all cut out and I'm ready to start sewing. So to get started making this cushion, I am going to take my side pieces and match them up at the short ends with the right sides together. So the fluffy side of the velvet is matching. And I'll just pin these in place and sew this down with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, going all the way around to form a box. So once all 4 of those seams are stitched down, I can go ahead and pin on one side of the cushion. So I'm taking that square piece and matching up the corners with each of those 4 seams and just pinning all the way around. So it's really taking shape as a box type of shape now. And what I'll do is just sew all the way around the perimeter of this square, being really careful to pivot at the corners. Those can be a little tricky to sew, so just take your time if you're doing this and make sure you're not catching any extra fabric. And you can see here as I'm sewing this that I'm keeping those side seams open so that I don't have to sew over so many layers of fabric as if it were all turned to one side. Now we can add the other side of the cushion, and the only difference here is that I'm going to leave a little gap so that I can turn this right side out. And I would say that the more thick and heavy duty your fabric is, the bigger of a gap to leave because it will be a little trickier to turn. So you just want to make sure that you're back stitching on either side of that gap so that the stitches don't break open. So now I am just turning my cushion right side out, and this was so fun to see it start to take shape and see how the velvet looked sewn together. I was already so excited with how it was looking. So now I am just stuffing it, and I am using a couple of bags of stuffing, and I think I actually overfilled mine just a little bit because I am doing tufting to this, and that was a little bit more tricky to do with a really full cushion, so you might want to not fill yours quite so much as I did, but I'm just filling it up with stuffing until I'm really happy with the appearance. So after I had finished stuffing the cushion, I just went ahead and stitched up that gap that we left in that original seam, and I'm just using a needle and thread and an invisible stitch to do this. So to make this cushion look a little bit more like the one from Urban Outfitters, I wanted to add some tufting, and I hadn't really done this before, but the way I decided to try to do it was to use some really thick thread and a longer needle and stitch all the way through the cushion from front to back a couple of times, and then knot that thread together really securely, and I think it worked really well. I did 1 in the center here, and then I did 4 surrounding it, so 5 total. As a final detail, I am just pinching together both the sides and the corners of the pillow and sewing this down with a really wide hand stitch about 1 inch from the edge. This just makes it look a lot more similar to the original one from Urban Outfitters. So I did this on both sides and then all 4 corners for a finishing touch. So after that, this pillow was done and I was really happy with how it turned out, and it was pretty easy to make as well. So I think I might be making myself a few more of these because I definitely love having floor cushions sitting around. So I know I've shown you guys a few different ways to make scrunchies on my channel before, but I thought today I would show you how I've been making these silk scrunchies. I make them a little bit bigger and then stitch them up by hand so that they don't have a big seam. So it's a really simple project to do. So to make this scrunchie, I'm using some scraps of some silk charmeuse, and I'm cutting out a strip of fabric that is 4 inches by 18 inches. Usually when I've made them in the past, I do about 3 inches wide, but 4 inches works really well for the silk. I think it shows off the texture of it really nicely. So the first step is just to fold in one end about 1/2 inch and press that down. And if you are using silk, you'll want to be really careful to use the delicate setting on your iron. And then I'm just going to pin this together all the way along the long side and stitch that down with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Next, I'm just going to turn the scrunchie right side out. I like to use a safety pin to do this, and then just press it flat and cut a piece of elastic that is about 9 inches long, and then thread that through the scrunchie and knot it securely. Next, I'm just tucking the raw end into the folded over end, and then I'll use a blind stitch to stitch this together so that you can't see any stitching on the outside. So once I finished hand stitching, I like to adjust the gathers in the scrunchie just to look a little bit more even, and I love how this turned out. I love these silk scrunchies. They're just so simple and a really great way to add a little bit of color to any outfit. So next up, I'm going to be making this little sleep mask, and I actually used to make these for my Etsy shop, which it's been a really long time since I've sold them there, but I will be including a link to a free download for my template that I've made for these, so check the description box if you decide you want to make one as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut out 2 pieces using my template from my fabric. I like to use cotton fabric, but you could use really any type that you want. You could definitely customize this using fabric. And then I also like to cut out a layer of thin cotton batting. You could also use like an old towel or felt or something like that, but anything that will give it a little bit of padding. Next, I'll cut out a strip of fabric that is 2.5 inches wide and 18 inches long. So now I have all of my pieces cut out and I can get started with sewing this, but I'm giving everything a quick iron first, and then I'm just going to fold together that long strip of fabric and stitch all the way across the long end using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. This is very similar to how we made the scrunchie just a minute ago. So I'll stitch that down and then turn it to the right side using a safety pin. So after you have turned this right side out, go ahead and measure out a piece of elastic that will fit comfortably from one end of one eye across the back of your head to your other eye. It can be stretched a little bit, but make sure it fits really comfortably, and then just pin down each end after you've threaded that elastic through this tube. We're going to put this whole thing together, so start by layering one of your pieces over the batting with the right side facing out, so the good side of the fabric. Then you'll take your strap and pin it to either side of this with each end about 1 inch below the top of the mask piece. Once that's pinned down, place the other piece over the top with the right side facing in and pin all the way around, leaving a little gap that you can pull the strap through to turn the whole thing to the right side. Before you start sewing, do make sure that your strap is contained in the middle and won't be caught in any of your seams. Then we're just going to stitch all the way around, but making sure to leave that gap, and I am using a 1/4 inch seam allowance here. Also make sure that your elastic gets caught in the seam. So next I'm just pulling on that strap to turn everything towards the right side and giving it a quick press. I'm also using a knitting needle to kind of push out any edges that are stuck, and then turning under that little gap that we left so that it is turned towards the inside, and then I'll just top stitch all the way around the edge to secure that down and also give it a finishing touch.
final result is so cute, and I especially love it in this floral fabric. I think it really makes the design look a little bit more special. So these make great gifts, and they're also great for traveling, and that cotton batting makes them really comfortable. And my last project for today is probably the most fast and easy project that I've ever made on my channel, but I've been getting really into skincare recently. Thank you, Skincare by Hiram. And I wanted to make some little reusable cotton rounds because I don't like buying them. It just feels really wasteful. So I made these out of some cotton flannel, and I love how they turned out. So it was really easy to make as well. So I'm just using some cotton flannel, and then I'm using a cup to draw out circles. You could use whatever you have around. This is just the cup that goes with my iron. And I'm drawing out circles out of this flannel, and then I'll just cut them all out. Now, to make these last a little bit longer, I will be stacking them up and using 2 layers for each of my rounds. I think that works a lot better than just a single layer and will also last longer. I plan to just wash these in a little mesh bag, and I think that'll work really well. So after I cut them out, I just stacked them in pairs, and then to sew them together, all I'm doing is using my sewing machine and a zigzag stitch and sewing all the way around the circle. I've set my machine so that the zigzags are really close together, and I think that works really well to keep it from looking messy on the edge. I also think it would be really cute to use multicolored thread using like different colors on the white fabric. I think that would be a really fun detail to add. And the cotton flannel works really, really well for these because it is so soft and gentle. It is really similar to what you would get with a cotton round that you would buy at the store. Close your eyes, get some rest. I'm by your side, lay your head on my chest. So here's what they look like once they're finished, and I am so happy with how they turned out. I definitely will be making a lot more of these. I want to have a whole stash of them in my bathroom for using with my toners, and I think it's just such a great, easy, eco-friendly swap to make. Get some rest.
Alright guys, so that is going to be it for today's video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you do end up making one of these projects, I would love to see what you create, so be sure to tag me on Instagram. My username over there is @JessLaurenJohnson, and I would love to see what you make. And if you're new to my channel and this is the first video that you've stumbled across, I'm so glad to have you here. I do post a lot of sewing and thrifting related content, so if you're interested in that, be sure to subscribe by pushing the red button down below, and that will let you be notified whenever I post in the future. I really appreciate you guys all hanging out on my channel here and watching it today, and I will talk to you in the next video. Bye!
Down, it's gonna be okay.